The Mafia boss awakened my senses with his touch, and his fierce love pierced my vulnerable heart. I was locking the front door of the bookstore on Bourbon Street when he walked in. Rain poured down outside, and water dripped from his black leather jacket onto the old wooden floor. Morris Sanchez stood there, tall and muscular, with dark tattoos climbing up his neck and disappearing under his collar. His eyes locked onto mine, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. Peggy Wendland. He said my name like he had been searching for me. His voice was deep and sent shivers through my entire body. I gripped the keys in my hand, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "We're closed," I managed to whisper, but my voice shook. He stepped closer, moving between the shelves with complete confidence. Thunder rumbled through the French Quarter, shaking the windows. "The men looking for you aren't far behind. You have two choices right now. Trust me and live, or run again and die tonight." My hands trembled. He knew. He knew I was running, knew what I had witnessed, knew everything. But as he stood there, this dangerous stranger with ink-covered skin and eyes that seemed to see straight into my soul, something unexpected happened. My heart didn't just race with fear. Something else awakened inside me, something I had never felt before. Will Peggy trust this dangerous stranger with her life? Before we continue, please tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe to our channel, because tomorrow we're dropping another powerful story you won't want to miss. Your support means everything to us and helps us bring you more incredible love stories like this one. Now, let me tell you what happened next. Morris didn't give me time to overthink my decision. Within minutes, we were in his car, a sleek black vehicle that moved through the wet streets of New Orleans like it owned them. I sat in the passenger seat, watching the city blur past through Rain Street windows, my mind racing with questions I was too afraid to ask. "Where are we going?" I finally whispered. "Somewhere safe," he replied, his hand steady on the wheel. "My home." The Garden District appeared through the darkness like something from another era. Massive oak trees lined the streets, their branches heavy with Spanish moss that swayed in the storm. Morris pulled through iron gates that closed behind us with a solid clang, and there it was, a Victorian mansion that took my breath away. White columns rose 3 stories high, and gas lamps glowed warmly on either side of the entrance. Inside, the house was even more beautiful. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, casting soft light across polished hardwood floors. Antique furniture filled every room, and the walls were covered with paintings and photographs that spoke of generations of family history. "This is where you live?" I asked, unable to hide my amazement. Morris shrugged off his wet jacket, revealing more of the intricate tattoos that covered his arms. Roses and thorns twisted together in dark ink, beautiful and dangerous at the same time. "This house has been in my family for over 100 years. My great-grandfather built it with money from his businesses." "What kind of businesses?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. He looked at me directly, his dark eyes honest. "The kind that exist in shadows. The kind that most people pretend don't exist but rely on more than they'd admit." He moved closer, and I caught the scent of rain and leather and something uniquely him. "I won't lie to you, Peggy. I'm the head of an organization that operates outside the law. But we have rules. No drugs near schools. No hurting innocent people. No exploitation of those who can't protect themselves. Why are you telling me this?" My voice came out softer than I intended. "Because you deserve the truth. You deserve to know exactly who's protecting you." He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and tucked a strand of wet hair behind my ear. His fingers were warm against my cold skin. "And because I need you to understand that even though my world is dangerous, I would never let that danger touch you." My heart hammered in my chest. Every logical part of my brain screamed that I should be terrified of this man. He was a criminal, a mafia boss, someone who lived by different rules than the rest of society. But standing there in his beautiful home, looking into eyes that held such fierce protectiveness, I felt something I hadn't expected. Safety. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. The men who are hunting you work for a rival organization, Morris continued, leading me up a grand staircase. They can't afford to let you testify about what you saw, but they won't find you here. My security is the best in the South. He showed me to a bedroom on the second floor. It was elegant and feminine, with a four-poster bed draped in soft fabrics and windows that overlooked the garden below. This was my sister's room before she got married and moved to Texas. You'll be comfortable here. Your sister? I asked, surprised by this glimpse into his personal life. Something soft crossed his features. Carmen. She's a teacher now, believes in making the world better through education. She got out of the family business, made her own path. He paused at the doorway. She'd like you, I think. You have the same strength she does. After he left, I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process everything that had happened in the past few hours. I had run from Miami to New Orleans, desperate to disappear. Instead, I had been found by a man who terrified and attracted me in equal measure. A man whose touch had awakened something in me I didn't fully understand yet. Through the window, I could see the rain beginning to slow. The garden below was lush and overgrown, wild in a way that felt intentional. Magnolia trees blocked the view from the street, creating a private sanctuary. This house, this beautiful fortress, felt like it existed outside of time and normal rules. I thought about Morris's words, his honesty, the way his eyes had softened when he mentioned his sister. This wasn't just a criminal. This was a man with family, with history, with his own code of honor that might not align with the law but clearly meant something to him. My phone buzzed in my pocket, making me jump. It was dead, the battery finally giving out after days of minimal charging. Somehow, that felt symbolic. My old life, my old identity as just Peggy Wendland, the paralegal who witnessed something terrible, was dying. Something new was beginning, though I had no idea what shape it would take. What I did know, sitting there in that elegant bedroom while rain pattered against the windows, was that Morris Sanchez had already changed something fundamental inside me. His presence, his touch, his fierce determination to protect me, had awakened senses I didn't know I possessed. And despite every reason I had to be afraid, all I could think about was the warmth of his fingers against my skin and the way my heart had raced when he looked at me. The first morning, I woke to the smell of coffee drifting through the house. Strong, rich coffee unlike anything I had ever experienced before. I followed the scent downstairs and found Morris in the kitchen, standing at the stove in dark jeans and a fitted t-shirt that showed off his muscular arms and the full extent of his tattoos. "Good morning," he said, glancing over his shoulder with a small smile that transformed his entire face. "Do you drink Cuban coffee?" "I've never had it," I admitted, suddenly aware that I was still in the clothes from yesterday, my hair a mess. He poured the dark liquid into a small cup, added sugar, and handed it to me. Our fingers touched during the exchange, and I felt electricity shoot up my arm. My grandmother taught me to make this when I was 8 years old. She said a man who can't make proper coffee isn't worth his salt. I took a sip and the flavor exploded on my tongue. Strong, sweet, perfectly balanced. "This is incredible." "She'd be happy to hear you say that." He leaned against the counter, his own cup in hand, watching me with those intense eyes. "Today, I teach you your first Spanish word. Coffee is café. Say it." "Café," I repeated, and he smiled again. Good. Tomorrow, another word. By the time you leave here, you'll know enough to survive in Little Havana. But I didn't want to think about leaving. Not yet. Our days fell into a rhythm that felt natural despite how strange the situation was. Every morning, Morris made coffee and taught me new Spanish words. Mi corazón, my heart. Hermosa, beautiful. Querida, darling. He would say them slowly, his accent making each word sound like music, and I would repeat them, loving the way his eyes warmed when I got the pronunciation right. After breakfast, he would disappear into his office for business I didn't ask about. I spent those hours in his library, a massive room with floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with books in both English and Spanish. I would lose myself in novels, occasionally glancing out the tall windows at the garden where birds sang in the magnolia trees. One afternoon, I was reaching for a book on the top shelf when I heard his voice behind me. Let me help you. I turned on the ladder, suddenly aware of how high up I was, how unsteady I felt. Before I could respond, Morris's hands were on my waist, strong and warm through the thin fabric of my dress. He steadied me, his grip firm but gentle. Careful, he murmured, his face now level with mine because of my height on the ladder. I can't protect you if you break your neck in my own library. We were so close I could see flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his body. My hands instinctively went to his shoulders for balance, and I felt the solid muscle beneath his shirt, the tension coiled in his frame. Maybe I don't need protecting every second, I whispered, surprised by my own boldness. Something flickered across his face. Desire, raw and unmistakable, followed immediately by restraint. His jaw tightened and his fingers flexed slightly against my waist before he carefully stepped back, helping me down from the ladder with deliberate gentleness. The book, he said, his voice rougher than usual. He reached up easily and pulled down the novel I had been trying to reach. When he handed it to me, our fingers touched again, and neither of us moved for several heartbeats. Thank you, I managed. He nodded and left the library quickly, like he didn't trust himself to stay. That night, we had dinner together at the long dining table. Morris had cooked, another skill his grandmother had insisted on. Arroz con pollo, chicken and rice seasoned with saffron and spices that made my mouth water. As we ate, he told me stories about growing up in Miami, about his grandmother who had emigrated from Cuba with nothing but her recipes and her determination. She sounds wonderful, I said, watching the way his face softened when he spoke about her. She would have liked you. He looked at me across the table, candlelight dancing between us. She always said I would know the right woman when I met someone who could see past the surface to what's underneath. My breath caught. And have you met someone like that? He held my gaze, and the air between us felt charged with everything we weren't saying. Yes, I think I have. I should have been scared. I should have remembered that this man was dangerous, that his world was violent, that I barely knew him. But all I could feel was my heart racing, my skin tingling with awareness every time he looked at me, every accidental touch sending waves of warmth through my body. Later that week, we were in the kitchen together. Morris was teaching me how to dice onions properly, standing behind me with his arms around mine, guiding my hands with the knife. His chest pressed against my back, his breath warm against my ear as he gave gentle instructions. Like this, see? Let the knife do the work. I couldn't concentrate on the onions. All I could focus on was the feeling of being surrounded by him, the safety and excitement of his nearness, the way my body responded to every point where we touched. Peggy, he said softly, and I felt him rest his forehead briefly against my hair. You're making this very difficult for me. Making what difficult? I whispered, keeping my distance, doing the right thing. His arms tightened around me for just a moment before he stepped away. You deserve better than this. Better than me. I turned to face him, the knife forgotten on the cutting board. What if you're exactly what I want? The look he gave me was full of longing and conflict, desire and honor battling behind his eyes. But he didn't reach for me. He simply stood there, hands clenched at his sides, fighting himself. That's when I knew for certain. I was falling in love with Morris Sanchez. Not despite who he was, but because of it. Because he was strong enough to be gentle, dangerous enough to protect me, honorable enough to give me the space to choose, even when it cost him everything to hold back. I started noticing the small things about Morris. The way he would pause outside whatever room I was in, his hand on the doorframe, as if gathering strength before entering. The way his eyes would follow me when he thought I wasn't looking. The tension in his shoulders that never quite disappeared, like he was constantly holding himself back from something. One evening, I found him in the kitchen again, this time making ropa vieja, shredded beef and tomato sauce. He moved around the space with practiced ease, tasting, adjusting seasonings, his tattooed hands surprisingly delicate as he worked. Your grandmother taught you all of this? I asked from my spot at the counter. Everything worth knowing, he replied, adding a pinch of cumin to the pot. She believed that cooking for someone was an act of love, that you put your heart into the food, and they can taste it. He glanced at me, something vulnerable in his expression. She died 3 years ago. Cancer. I held her hand at the end, and she made me promise I wouldn't let this life harden my heart completely. I'm sorry, I said softly. He nodded, stirring the pot slowly. She was the only person who knew all of me. The business, the violence, the choices I've had to make. And she loved me anyway. She said everyone deserves that kind of love, even men like me. He paused. Especially men like me. She was right, I said. Morris looked at me for a long moment, something intense and conflicted in his gaze. Peggy, I need you to understand something. When this is over, when you're safe, you'll have choices. You can go anywhere, be anyone. You don't owe me anything. What if I don't want to go? His jaw tightened. You say that now, but you're here because you have no other option. That's not real choice. That's circumstance. He turned off the stove and faced me fully. I won't take advantage of this situation. I won't let you make decisions about your life when you're vulnerable and scared. You think I'm only here because I'm scared. I stood up, moving closer to him. Morris, I've been scared for weeks. But with you, I feel safer than I ever did in my normal life. That law firm where I worked, those people I thought I could trust, they all disappeared the moment I became inconvenient. You're the only person who's actually protected me. He closed his eyes briefly, like my words caused him physical pain. You deserve someone who comes home at normal hours. Someone whose hands aren't stained with the things mine are. Someone who can give you a simple, peaceful life. Maybe I don't want simple, I said quietly. That night, unable to sleep, I wandered downstairs and found Morris sitting in the living room, a sketchbook in his lap. He looked up, startled, and tried to close it, but I had already seen a drawing of a woman's face, delicate lines capturing an expression of joy. Is that your grandmother? I asked. He relaxed slightly and nodded, opening the book to show me. I draw sometimes. It helps me think, helps me remember. He flipped through pages filled with faces, places, moments captured in pencil and charcoal. His talent was undeniable, each image filled with emotion and life. These are beautiful, Morris. You're really talented. My grandmother encouraged it. She said every man needed something that was just his, something gentle to balance the harsh things in life. He looked at the drawing of his grandmother with such tenderness. I haven't shown these to anyone in years. Thank you for showing me, I said, settling onto the couch beside him. We sat there in comfortable silence for a while before Morris spoke again. Tell me about your life before all of this. Who is Peggy Wendland when she's not running? So I told him about growing up in a small town in Georgia, about putting myself through college, about the paralegal job that I thought would be the start of a real career, about the loneliness of living in Miami, knowing people but not really connecting with anyone, about always feeling like I was waiting for something to begin, for life to finally start. I felt invisible most of the time, I admitted, like I was just going through the motions, doing what I was supposed to do, but never really feeling alive. Morris shifted closer, his arm along the back of the couch behind me. And now I feel everything, I whispered. Too much, maybe. Every moment feels intense and real and important. That's because you're living in the present, he said. When your life is on the line, you stop taking things for granted. But Peggy, that's also why I have to be careful with you. These feelings you're experiencing, they're heightened by danger. When you're safe again, when your adrenaline isn't running high, you might feel differently. I turned to look at him, at this complicated man who was fighting so hard to do right by me even when it clearly cost him. You're wrong. This isn't just adrenaline. What I feel when you look at me, when you touch me, when you say my name, that's not fair or circumstance. That's something real. His hand came up to cup my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone with heartbreaking gentleness. You're making it very hard to be honorable. Maybe honor isn't always about holding back, I said. Maybe sometimes it's about being honest. We stayed like that for hours, talking quietly in the darkness. Morris told me about the weight of responsibility, about the men who depended on him, about walking the line between right and wrong every single day. I told him about my dreams, my fears, the things I had always been too afraid to want. As dawn began to break through the windows, painting the room in shades of pink and gold, Morris finally stood. You should get some sleep. But before I could respond, he leaned down and pressed a kiss to my forehead, soft and reverent. Thank you for seeing me, Peggy. The real me. Not many people do. I watched him leave the room, my heart full and aching at the same time. This man, this dangerous, honorable, complicated man, was trying so hard to protect my freedom to choose. What he didn't understand was that I had already chosen. I had chosen him. Morris told me at breakfast on a Tuesday morning. He set down his coffee cup carefully, his expression apologetic before he even spoke. I have to go to Atlanta. Business that can't be postponed. His eyes searched mine. I'll be gone for 2 days, 3 at most. My men will be here. You'll be completely safe, but I need you to promise me you'll stay inside the gates. I promise, I said, though my heart was already sinking at the thought of him leaving. He reached across the table and took my hand, his thumb rubbing gentle cycles on my palm. I wouldn't go if it wasn't necessary. I know. 2 hours later, I stood at the window and watched his car disappear through the iron gates. The house felt different immediately. Emptier. Colder. Somehow, despite the warm New Orleans sun streaming through the windows. I had only known Morris for 2 weeks, but his presence had become so essential to my days that his absence felt like a physical ache in my chest. The first day dragged. I tried to read but couldn't focus. I tried to watch television but nothing held my interest. Everything reminded me of him. The kitchen where he cooked for me. The library where we spent quiet afternoons. the living room where we talked until dawn. Even the coffee I made for myself tasted wrong without him there to guide my measurements. By the second day, restlessness drove me to explore parts of the mansion I had avoided before. I climbed to the third floor, where dust motes danced in shafts of sunlight coming through tall windows. Storage rooms filled with furniture covered in white sheets. A music room with a guitar leaning against an amplifier. I touched the strings gently, and they hummed with neglect. Finally, I found myself standing outside Morris's bedroom. I had never been inside, had respected that private space even as we grew closer. But something drew me forward. The door opened silently, revealing a large room that was somehow both masculine and artistic. Dark wood furniture, crisp white linens on a massive bed, and walls covered with framed photographs and paintings. I moved through the space slowly, taking in details that told me more about Morris than weeks of conversation had. Photographs of his family, his sister's graduation, his grandmother in a kitchen identical to the one downstairs. Books stacked on his nightstand, titles ranging from philosophy to poetry to history. It was the desk by the window that stopped me cold. A leather portfolio sat there, slightly open. I knew I shouldn't look. This was private, personal. But my hands moved of their own accord, opening the portfolio fully. My own face stayed back at me. Dozens of sketches, all of me. Me reading in the library, sunlight catching my hair. Me laughing at something he had said, my head thrown back with joy. Me sleeping on the couch, peaceful and unguarded. Me standing at the stove, concentrating on dicing vegetables. Me looking out the window, my expression thoughtful and distant. Each drawing was exquisite, filled with detail and emotion. But more than the technical skill, it was the way he had captured me that made tears spring to my eyes. In his drawings, I looked beautiful. Not just pretty, but luminous, cherished, precious. He had drawn me the way someone draws the thing they love most in the world. My hands shook as I flipped through page after page. Some were quick sketches, capturing a moment. Others were elaborate, every line perfect, like he had spent hours studying my face. In all of them, I saw tenderness. In all of them, I saw love. This was how Morris Sanchez saw me. This dangerous man with blood on his hands and darkness in his past looked at me and saw light. Looked at me and saw something worth capturing, worth preserving, worth protecting with everything he had. I sank onto his bed, the portfolio clutched to my chest, and finally understood what I had been feeling but couldn't name. This wasn't gratitude or circumstance or heightened emotions from danger. This was love, real, deep, transformative love that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with finding the person who saw you completely and loved what they saw. Morris thought he was giving me time to choose freely. He thought his honor required him to hold back, to wait until I was safe and clear-headed. But what he didn't understand was that I had never been more clear-headed in my life. The danger, the impossible circumstances, they hadn't confused me. They had stripped away all the superficial things I thought mattered and shown me what actually did. I didn't want safety if it meant losing this. I didn't want normal if normal meant never feeling this alive again. I didn't want some imaginary perfect man with a simple life and clean hands. I wanted Morris, with all his complications and contradictions. I wanted his fierce protectiveness and his gentle touches. I wanted his grandmother's recipes and his late-night sketches. I wanted the way he made me feel seen and valued and cherished. I wanted this life, this complicated, dangerous, beautiful life with him. I carefully returned the portfolio to exactly how I had found it, but I didn't leave his room immediately. I sat there on his bed, in his space, surrounded by evidence of his life and his heart, and made my decision. When Morris came home, I would tell him the truth. No more dancing around what we both felt. No more letting his honor keep us apart when honor should bring us together. He thought he was protecting my freedom to choose. What he didn't realize was that I had already chosen him. Days ago. Maybe from that first moment in the bookstore when his eyes met mine and something fundamental shifted in my world. The sun was setting, painting his room in shades of orange and gold, when I heard it. The sound of his car coming through the gates. He was home early, a full day before he said he would be. My heart leaped, and I stood quickly, smoothing my dress, trying to calm the wild beating in my chest. I had promised myself I would wait, would think this through, would be rational. But the moment I heard his footsteps on the stairs, taking them two at a time like he couldn't wait another second, all rational thought fled. I moved to his bedroom door just as he appeared at the top of the staircase. We stood there, frozen, staring at each other across the hallway. His hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled from travel, and his eyes were intense with emotion I recognized now that I knew what to look for. "I couldn't stay away," he said, his voice rough. "I tried, Peggy. I tried to give you space, tried to do the right thing, but every moment I was gone, all I could think about was getting back to you." "I found your drawings," I said softly. His expression shifted, vulnerability and fear crossing his features. "Peggy, I can explain. They're beautiful. I'm beautiful in them." I took a step toward him. "Is that really how you see me?" He moved closer, closing the distance between us until we stood inches apart. "That's exactly how I see you. That's how you are." His hand came up to cup my face with that gentleness that always undid me. "You've awakened something in me I thought was dead. You've made me feel things I swore I'd never let myself feel again." "Then stop holding back," I whispered. "Stop protecting me from yourself when you're exactly what I want." Morris looked at me like I held his entire world in my hands. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, and I could see the war happening behind his eyes. Want versus restraint. Desire versus honor. But this time, I wasn't going to let honor win. "Peggy," he breathed my name like a prayer. "If we do this, if we cross this line, there's no going back. You need to be sure." I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I closed the remaining distance between us, placing my hand over his heart. It thundered beneath my palm, racing as fast as my own. "I love you, Morris Sanchez. Not because you saved me. Not because I'm grateful or confused or scared. I love you because of who you are. All of you. The dangerous parts and the gentle parts. The man who runs an empire and the man who makes his grandmother's recipes. The artist who draws in secret and the protector who would do anything to keep me safe." His control shattered. Morris pulled me against him, one hand tangling in my hair while the other wrapped around my waist, holding me so close I could barely breathe. "I love you," he said fiercely. "I've loved you since that night in the bookstore when you looked at me with fear but didn't run. Since the first morning you repeated Spanish words with that little crease between your eyebrows when you concentrated. Since every single moment that you've been under my roof, making this house feel like a home instead of just a fortress." The kiss, when it finally came, was everything I had dreamed and more. Morris kissed me like I was oxygen and he had been drowning. His lips were firm but tender, demanding but reverent. My hand slid up his chest, feeling the solid muscle beneath his shirt, the rapid beating of his heart that matched my own. His fingers tightened in my hair, tilting my head to deepen the kiss, and I melted against him completely. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Morris rested his forehead against mine. "I tried so hard to resist you, tried to do the right thing. But Peggy, you've completely undone me." "Good," I whispered, "because you've done the same to me." We moved to sit on his bed, neither willing to let go of the other. Morris kept one arm around me, his other hand holding mine, his thumb tracing patterns on my skin like he couldn't stop touching me. "Tell me everything," I said softly. "I want to know all of it. Your past, your fizz, everything you've been holding back." He was quiet for a long moment, gathering his thoughts. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and raw with emotion. "I was 15 when my father died. Shot in a deal that went wrong in Miami. One moment he was there, teaching me about the business, about honor among thieves, about protecting what's yours. The next moment, he was gone." Morris's jaw tightened. My uncle wanted to take over, wanted to push my mother and sister aside. I had to become a man overnight, had to be harder, colder, more ruthless than anyone expected from a teenager. I built walls around myself, around my heart, because feeling anything was a weakness I couldn't afford. I squeezed his hand, encouraging him to continue. 4 years, those walls kept me safe, kept me focused. I did what I had to do, made the hard choices, built the empire my father started into something bigger. I had women, but I never let anyone close. Never let anyone matter enough that losing them would break me. He turned to look at me, his eyes glistening. "Until you walked into my world and demolished every single wall I'd spent 15 years building." "Morris," I breathed, my heart aching for the boy who had to grow up too fast, who had learned to protect himself by never caring too deeply. "You want to know what terrified me most," he continued. "It wasn't the danger you were in. I can handle danger. I can plan for it, fight it, control it. What terrified me was how much power you had over me from the very beginning. The power to hurt me in ways bullets and betrayal never could. The power to make me care so much that losing you would destroy me." I reached up to cup his face, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw, the warmth of his skin. "You're not going to lose me. You can't promise that. Life is unpredictable, especially my life." His voice cracked slightly. "But Peggy, even knowing that risk, even knowing how much it will hurt if something happens, I can't walk away from you. You've pierced through every defense I had. You've reached the vulnerable heart I thought I'd locked away forever. And now that you're there, I don't want you to leave. I'm not going anywhere," I promised, and sealed it with another kiss. We talked through the night, watching through his windows as the moon traveled across the sky. Morris told me about his first kill, the guilt that still haunted him even though it had been self-defense. About his sister Carmen and how he'd paid for her education, determined she would have choices he never had. About his mother who lived in Florida now, retired and safe, believing her son ran legitimate businesses because that's what he needed her to believe. I told him about my own fizz, about feeling invisible for so long, like I was just existing instead of living. About the night I witnessed that murder in Miami, how it shattered my safe, predictable world. About running, constantly looking over my shoulder, trusting no one. "I was so lonely before you," I admitted as dawn began to paint the sky pink and gold. "I had acquaintances, people I worked with, but no one who really saw me. No one who cared about what I thought or felt or wanted. And then you walked into that bookstore, and for the first time in my life, I felt seen." Morris pulled me closer, pressing a kiss to my temple. "You are seen, mi amor. Every part of you. The strength and the vulnerability. The fear and the courage. The woman you were and the woman you're becoming. I see all of it, and I love all of it." We fell asleep just as the sun fully rose, tangled together in his bed, both of us finally letting go of the restraint that had kept us apart. When I woke hours later, Morris was propped up on one elbow, watching me with such tenderness that my breath caught. I could watch you sleep forever, he said softly, brushing hair from my face. You look so peaceful. Like all the fear and stress just falls away. I feel peaceful with you, I replied, stretching and snuggling closer to his warmth. Even knowing who you are and what you do, I feel safer with you than I ever have in my entire life. That's because you're mine now, he said, his voice taking on that possessive edge that sent shivers through me. And I protect what's mine with everything I have. No one will ever hurt you, Peggy. Not while I'm breathing. I believed him. This man, this complicated, dangerous, tender man had opened his heart to me completely, had shown me his scars and his fears and trusted me with the vulnerable parts he showed no one else. We had crossed a line there was no uncrossing, and I had never been happier about a decision in my life. What happens now? I asked. Morris smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. Now, M.I. Corazon, I stop holding back. I stop pretending I can resist you. I love you openly, completely, the way you deserve to be loved. He kissed me slowly, thoroughly. And when this threat is over, when you're truly safe, I'm going to ask you to stay with me forever. Not because you need protection, but because you want to build a life with me. Yes, I said simply. He laughed, a sound of pure joy I had never heard from him before. I haven't asked yet. I'm saying yes anyway. To whatever life we can build together. To all the complications and challenges. To you, Morris. Always to you. The weeks that followed were the happiest of my life. Morris stopped holding himself at a distance, and the difference was breathtaking. He touched me constantly now, casual affection that spoke volumes. His hand on the small of my back as we moved through rooms. Fingers threading through mine as we sat together. Arms wrapped around me from behind as I stood at the kitchen counter. Every touch reminded me that I was loved, cherished, wanted. Today, he announced one morning over coffee, I'm showing you my New Orleans. The real city, not the tourist version. We started at the French market just as dawn broke over the Mississippi River. Morris held my hand as we walked through stalls overflowing with fresh produce, handmade crafts, and spices that filled the air with exotic scents. Vendors called out greetings to him, some in Spanish, some in English, all with respect in their voices. He stopped at a flower stand and bought me a bouquet of gardenias, their sweet perfume intoxicating. For you, Hermosa, he said, tucking one bloom behind my A. The vendor smiled at us, and I realized she thought we were just another couple in love. Which, I supposed, we were. Just a couple with more complications than most. At Café du Monde, we sat at a small table overlooking Jackson Square, eating bayonets that left powdered sugar all over our clothes. Morris laughed as I tried unsuccessfully to eat one without making a mess, then leaned over and gently wiped sugar from my lips with his thumb. You have to embrace the mess, he said, his eyes warm. That's half the joy. I watched him take a bite of his own bayonet, sugar dusting his dark shirt, completely relaxed in a way I had never seen him before. You're different here, I observed. Out in the world with me. Because I'm happy, he said simply. For the first time in longer than I can remember, I'm genuinely happy. You do that to me, Peggy. You make me remember there's more to life than just surviving. In Jackson Square, we watched street performers and artists. A jazz trio played near the cathedral, their music floating through the humid air. Without warning, Morris pulled me into his arms and began to dance with me right there on the cobblestones. Other people watched and smiled, but I only saw him. The way he held me close, the way he moved with such natural grace, the way his eyes never left mine. Where did you learn to dance like this? I asked, breathless. My grandmother, remember? She said every man should know how to properly hold a woman. He spun me gently, then pulled me back against his chest. She said dancing was like making love with your clothes on. It's about connection, about trust, about two people moving as one. Heat flooded through me at his words, at the implication, at the feeling of our bodies moving together in perfect rhythm. Your grandmother was a wise woman. She would have adored you, he murmured into my ear. She always told me I'd know the right woman when I found someone who could make me feel again. Someone who could wake up the parts of me I'd put to sleep. That night, back at the mansion, Morris taught me to make his grandmother's recipe for flan. We stood side by side in the kitchen, his hands guiding mine as we caramelized sugar, mixed custard, prepared the water bath. Music played from his phone on the counter, old Latin songs that made him sing along softly in Spanish. What are the words? I asked, loving the sound of his voice. It's a love song, about a man who thought his heart was dead until he met a woman who brought him back to life. He turned me to face him, swaying to the music even though we were supposed to be cooking. It's about how love can find you in the most unexpected places with the most unexpected person. We danced there in the kitchen, the flan forgotten for the moment, just holding each other and moving to music that spoke of passion and longing and devotion. When the song ended, Morris didn't let me go. He just held me, his cheek resting on top of my head, his arms solid and safe around me. I never thought I could have this, he said quietly. This peace, this joy, this feeling that everything in my life finally makes sense. He pulled back to look at me. You've awakened senses I didn't know I still had, Peggy. The ability to feel hope. To imagine a future that's about more than just power and control. To want something beyond survival. I reached up to trace the tattoos on his neck, the roses and thorns that were so much a part of who he was. You've done the same for me. Before you, I was just going through the motions. Now I feel everything so intensely it almost scares me. The way my heart races when you walk into a room. The way my skin tingles when you touch me. The way I can't imagine my life without you in it. His kiss was slow and deep, tasting of sugar and coffee and promise. When we finally broke apart, the timer was going off for the flan, and we both laughed. One afternoon, Morris had a meeting with some business associates. I watched from the library window as men in expensive suits arrived at the mansion. When Morris greeted them, he was completely different. His body language changed, becoming more imposing, more dangerous. His voice took on a harder edge. This was Morris Sanchez, the boss, the man people feared and respected in equal measure. But when the meeting ended and he found me in the library, that hard exterior melted away instantly. He pulled me into his arms, burying his face in my hair, breathing deeply like he was centering himself. Rough meeting? I asked. Just necessary business. Nothing for you to worry about. He kissed my forehead. But coming back to you, seeing your face, being able to hold you like this, it makes everything else bearable. You're my sanctuary, Peggy. The place where I can just be Morris, not the boss, not the heir to an empire, just a man in love. That evening, we walked through the garden behind the mansion. The air was thick with the scent of magnolias and jasmine, fireflies beginning to appear as dusk settled over New Orleans. Morris held my hand, our fingers intertwined, and told me about his plans for the future. I want to legitimize more of the businesses, he said. For you. For the family we might have someday. I can't walk away from everything. It's too deeply ingrained. But I can shift things. Make them cleaner. Build something I'm proud to pass on. You're doing that for me? I asked, stunned. I'm doing it for us. He stopped walking and turned to face me, the last rays of sunlight catching the gold flecks in his dark eyes. You've changed me, amor. Made me want to be better. Made me believe I can be better. Before you, I accepted that my life would always be lived in shadows. But you're light, Peggy. Pure, beautiful light. And I want to be worthy of standing in that light with you. Tears filled my eyes. Morris, you're already worthy. You've always been worthy. No, he said firmly. I've done things, Peggy. Things I can never take back or make right. Things that will always be part of who I am. But with you, I feel like maybe those things don't have to define my entire future. Maybe I can build something better. We made love that night with a tenderness that took my breath away. Morris touched me like I was precious, like I was something sacred he was honored to hold. He whispered Spanish words against my skin, love words I was learning to understand. Mi vida, my life. Mi alma, my soul. Mi todo, my everything. Afterward, lying in his arms with moonlight streaming through the windows, I felt complete in a way I never had before. This was what I had been waiting for my entire life. Not safety or security or a predictable future. This connection, this depth of feeling, this man who had awakened every sense, every emotion, every part of me that had been dormant. What are you thinking? Morris asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my shoulder. That I love you more than I knew it was possible to love someone. That you've shown me what it means to really live instead of just exist. That every moment with you feels like a gift. He tightened his arms around me. You're the gift, Peggy. You walked into my darkness and brought light. You saw past the monster everyone else sees and found the man underneath. You've pierced my heart in the most beautiful way possible. I noticed the change in Morris before he said anything. The way his jaw would tighten when his phone rang. The increased number of men patrolling the grounds. The way he would stand at the windows late at night, staring out at the darkness with tension radiating from every line of his body. Talk to me, I said one evening, finding him in his office, staring at his computer screen with a grim expression. He looked up, and I saw him consider lying, consider shielding me from whatever was happening. But we had promised each other honesty, so he gestured for me to come closer. They found whispers. The men looking for you, they know you're in New Orleans. They don't know exactly where yet, but they're getting closer. His hand found mine, squeezing tightly. I've increased security. Put out feelers to my contacts. We'll know if they make any moves toward the Garden District. My stomach dropped, but I refused to let fear control me. What do? We stay vigilant. We keep you safe behind these walls until I can neutralize the threat. He pulled me into his lap, holding me close. I won't let them touch you, Peggy. I promise you that. Over the next few days, the tension in the house grew thick. Morris barely slept, spending hours on phone calls in Spanish, his voice hard and commanding in ways I rarely heard. More men arrived, taking positions around the property. The mansion that had felt like a sanctuary now felt like a fortress under siege. I tried to act normal, to not let the fear consume me, but it was impossible to ignore. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. And worst of all, I could see what this was doing to Morris. The walls he had torn down for me were trying to rebuild themselves, his protective instincts warring with the vulnerability he had finally allowed himself to feel. Late one night, I found him standing at the bedroom window at 3 a.m, fully dressed, his body rigid with tension. I wrapped my arms around him from behind, pressing my cheek against his back. "Come to bed," I said softly. "I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see scenarios. Ways they could get to you. Ways I could fail to protect you." His voice was raw. Peggy, if something happened to you because of me, because I brought you into my world. Stop! I interrupted firmly, moving to stand in front of him. You didn't bring me into danger, Morris. I was already in danger when you found me. You've kept me safe for weeks when those men would have killed me on that first night. But now they are closer. Now the threat is real again. His hands came up to cup my face, his eyes tortured. I should send you away. Somewhere far from here. Somewhere they'll never find you. My contacts in Europe, they could... No. I said it with such force that he stopped mid-sentence. I'm not leaving you, Morris. I'm not running anymore. You don't understand what these men are capable of. Then tell me, I demanded. Stop trying to shield me from reality. I'm not some fragile thing that needs to be protected from the truth. I'm the woman who loves you, who chose this life with you. So tell me everything. Morris closed his eyes, conflict clear on his face. When he opened them again, they were filled with a fear I had never seen before. They're professionals, Peggy, the kind of men who don't leave witnesses, who don't show mercy. The organization they work for has resources, connections. If they breach this house, if they get past my security, his voice broke. I've faced death 100 times in my life. I've looked down the barrel of guns, survived ambushes, walked into situations knowing I might not walk out. None of that scared me the way losing you scares me. I reached up to touch his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. You're not going to lose me. We're going to face this together. Together. He shook his head. Peggy, you don't know what you're saying. This isn't some romantic notion of standing by your man. This is real violence, real danger. I know exactly what I'm saying, I interrupted. Morris, I've spent my whole life being careful, being safe, following rules and doing what I was supposed to do. And what did it get me? A lonely existence where I felt invisible. You gave me something real, something worth fighting for. So yes, together. I face this threat with you, not hidden away somewhere while you deal with it alone. He pulled me roughly against him, his arms almost crushing in their intensity. You're making this so much harder. If I didn't have you to protect, I could be ruthless, calculated. But knowing you're here, knowing they want to hurt you, it terrifies me in ways I've never been terrified before. That's because you love me, I said against his chest, feeling his heart thundering. That's because I matter to you. But Morris, that love, that connection, it doesn't make you weaker. It makes you stronger. It gives you something to fight for beyond just survival. He buried his face in my hair, and I felt moisture against my scalp. Morris was crying. This strong, dangerous man who never showed weakness was crying because he was so afraid of losing me. You've completely destroyed me, he whispered. You've pierced through every defense I had, reached parts of my heart I thought were dead. And now those parts are vulnerable, exposed. The thought of them hurting you, of taking you from me, it's more painful than any bullet wound I've ever suffered. I held him tighter, letting him feel the steadiness of my presence, the certainty of my choice. I'm not going anywhere. We're going to get through this together, and then we're going to build the life we talked about. The future where we wake up together every morning and fall asleep in each other's arms every night. Morris pulled back to look at me, his eyes red but determined. If we do this, if you stay, you have to promise me something. If I tell you to run, if I tell you to hide, you do it without question. You trust that I know what I'm doing, that every decision I make is about keeping you alive. I promise, I said, though it terrified me to think of him facing danger while I hid. And you have to understand that the man you'll see if they come for us, He might not be the gentleman who cooks for you and dances with you in the kitchen. You'll see the other side of me, Peggy. The side that's capable of violence, of things that will be hard to watch. I took his hands in mine, looking directly into his eyes. I know who you are. All of who you are. The gentle artist and the fierce protector. The man who makes his grandmother's recipes and the man who built an empire. I love all of it, Morris. Every part of you. And nothing that happens will change that. He kissed me then, desperate and deep, like he was trying to mimize the taste of me, the feel of me in his arms. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. I've never had anything to lose before, he admitted. I've never cared about anything enough that losing it would break me. But you, Peggy, you've changed everything. You've given me something precious to protect, and that makes me more dangerous than I've ever been. Because I will do anything, sacrifice anything, destroy anyone who tries to take you from me. I know, I whispered, and that's exactly why we're going to survive this. Because what we have, this love that's awakened both of us, it's stronger than any threat. It's worth fighting for with everything we have. We stood there in the darkness, holding each other as night slowly gave way to dawn. Both of us knew that the danger was closing in, that soon we would face the threat that had been chasing me for weeks. But we also knew that we would face it together, that the love we had found in the most unlikely circumstances had transformed us both into something stronger than we had been alone. Morris had pierced my heart with his fierce love, and I had done the same to him. Now those vulnerable hearts, those exposed places, would be our greatest strength. Because when you have something worth dying for, you find the courage to live. It happened 3 nights later. I was reading in bed while Morris reviewed security reports on his laptop when the alarm system screamed to life. The sound was deafening, accompanied by flashing red lights throughout the house. Morris was on his feet instantly, his entire demeanor transforming in a heartbeat. "They're here," he said, his voice deadly calm as he pulled a gun from the nightstand drawer. "Peggy, we need to move now." My heart slammed against my ribs as he grabbed my hand and pulled me from the bedroom. We could hear shouting outside, the sound of gunfire in the distance. Morris moved through the house with practiced efficiency, his body positioned between me and any potential threat. "How many?" I asked, my voice shaking. "At least 6 breached the front gate. My men are engaging them, but we're not taking chances." He led me to the library, pressing a hidden switch that made an entire bookshelf swing inward, revealing a steel door behind it. "The panic room. You'll be safe here." "Morris." "No." I started to protest, but he was already punching a code into the keypad. The door opened to reveal a small room lined with reinforced walls. Supplies, water, a phone line connected directly to law enforcement. It was designed to keep someone alive until help arrived. "Please don't make this harder than it already is," Morris said, his eyes pleading even as more gunfire echoed through the house. "Closer now. I need to know you're safe. I can't fight effectively if I'm worried about you. What if something happens to you?" Tears streamed down my face. "What if you don't come back?" He pulled me against him fiercely, one hand tangling in my hair while the other pressed me close. "I will come back to you. I swear it on everything I am, everything I have. Nothing will keep me from you." He kissed me desperately, hungrily, like it might be the last time. "I love you, Peggy Wendland. From the moment you looked at me in that bookstore, I was yours. Every breath I take, every beat of my heart, belongs to you." "I love you," I sobbed against his lips. "Come back to me, Morris. Please come back. Always." One more kiss, quick and fierce, and he was pushing me gently into the panic room. "No matter what you hear, don't come out until I come for you. Promise me." "I promise." The steel door closed between us with a heavy clang, and I heard the locks engage. I was alone in the darkness, the only light coming from a small emergency lamp in the corner. The walls were thick enough that the sounds of fighting became muffled, distant, which somehow made it worse. I couldn't hear what was happening, couldn't know if Morris was safe. I sank to the floor, wrapping my arms around my knees, and prayed harder than I ever had in my life. Minutes felt like hours. Every sound, every vibration through the walls, sent terror through me. Was that gunfire? Was Morris hurt? Were his men holding the line? The worst part was the waiting, the not knowing. I replayed every moment we'd shared, every kiss, every touch, every whispered word of love. Morris had awakened something in me, had shown me what it meant to truly live, to truly feel. If he didn't come back, if those men took him from me, I didn't know how I would survive it. Time became meaningless. I counted my breaths, trying to stay calm. 1 breath, 2 breaths. Morris is strong. 3 breaths, 4 breaths. He promised he'd come back. 5 breaths, 6 breaths. Please let him be safe. The silence was worse than the noise had been. When the sounds of fighting finally stopped, the quiet that followed was suffocating. Was it over? Who had won? My hands shook as I stared at the steel door, willing it to open, willing Morris to be on the other side. Then I heard it, the locks disengaging. My heart stopped as the door began to swing open. I held my breath, terrified of what I might see. Morris stood there, alive. There was a cut above his eyebrow, blood on his shirt, but he was standing, breathing, looking at me with such relief that my legs nearly gave out. "It's over," he said, his voice rough. "You're safe now." I launched myself at him, and he caught me, holding me so tightly I couldn't breathe. I didn't care. I buried my face in his neck, feeling his pulse strong and steady, his arms solid around me, his body warm and alive. "I thought I lost you," I sobbed. "I thought they took you from me." "Never," he whispered fiercely into my hair. "I told you, nothing will keep me from you. Nothing." We stood there in the doorway, holding each other as my fear slowly transformed into overwhelming relief. He was alive. We were both alive. The nightmare was over. Morris finally pulled back enough to look at me, his hands cupping my face, his thumbs wiping away my tears. "They are all in custody." My men subdued them, called in some favors with law enforcement contacts I trust. With what they were attempting here, combined with the evidence you witnessed in Miami, we have enough to bring down their entire organization. It's really over. I could barely believe it. It's really over. He kissed my forehead, my cheeks, my lips. "You're safe, mi amor. You can stop running. You can finally be free." The next few hours were a blur of police statements and federal agents. Morris had connections everywhere, including clean cops who had been waiting for a chance to take down the criminal network that had been hunting me. The attack on the mansion gave them exactly what they needed: attempted murder, assault with deadly weapons, conspiracy charges that would put these men away for life. An FBI agent I vaguely recognized from Miami took my full statement about what I had witnessed weeks ago. With the new charges and the testimony I could now safely provide, they had enough to dismantle the entire operation. As dawn broke over New Orleans, the last of the law enforcement vehicles finally left the Garden District. Morris and I stood on the front steps of the mansion, watching the gates close behind them. His arm was around my waist, holding me close, and I leaned into his strength. "What happens now?" I asked quietly. He turned me to face him, his dark eyes intense with emotion. Now we live, Peggy. Really live. No more hiding, no more fear, no more looking over our shoulders. Just us, building the life we talked about. Together, I said. Together, he agreed, and kissed me as the sun rose over the city that had become our home, the place where danger had brought us together but love had saved us both. 2 months had passed since that terrifying night. The men who had hunted me were now serving federal sentences that would keep them locked away for decades. The criminal organization they worked for had collapsed under the weight of investigations and arrests. I was finally, truly safe. Life in the Garden District mansion had transformed. The tension that had hung in the air for weeks was gone, replaced by a peace I had never imagined possible. Morris was different too. Lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He smiled more, laughed easier, touched me with a freedom that spoke of security rather than desperation. We had fallen into a beautiful rhythm. Mornings still started with Cuban coffee and Spanish lessons that had expanded far beyond simple words. Afternoons were spent exploring New Orleans together, finding new restaurants and hidden corners of the city. Evenings were ours alone, cooking together, dancing in the kitchen, making love like we had all the time in the world. Because now, we did. One evening, Morris told me to dress nice. "I'm taking you somewhere special," was all he would say, his eyes twinkling with a secret. We drove to the French Quarter as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. He parked near Royal Street and led me by the hand to a restaurant I had never noticed before, up a narrow staircase to a private balcony that overlooked the historic street below. The view was breathtaking. The old buildings glowed golden in the sunset light, their iron balconies dripping with flowers and ferns. Street musicians played somewhere nearby, their music floating up to us on the warm evening breeze. The Mississippi River stretched in the distance, reflecting the colors of the sky like liquid fire. "This is beautiful," I breathed, leaning against the railing. Morris moved behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and pulling me back against his chest. "Not as beautiful as you," he murmured into my hair. We stood like that for several moments, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. "Peggy," he finally said, his voice taking on a different quality. "Do you remember that first night in the bookstore? When I walked in and you looked at me like I was both your salvation and your doom?" "I remember everything about that night," I replied softly. "I knew in that moment that you were going to change my life. I didn't know how, didn't understand the depth of it yet, but I felt something shift inside me when our eyes met." His arms tightened around me. "You were running from danger, and I was the danger that found you. It should have been the beginning of a nightmare. Instead, it became the most beautiful thing that ever happened to me." He stepped back, and I turned to face him. My heart started racing when I saw him reaching into his pocket. Morris dropped to one knee on that balcony overlooking the French Quarter, the sunset blazing behind him, and pulled out a ring that caught the light and threw rainbow sparkles across the old brick walls. "Peggy Wendland, you walked into my darkness and brought light. You pierced through every defense I'd built and found the heart I thought I'd buried forever. You awakened senses and emotions I didn't think I was capable of feeling anymore." His voice was thick with emotion, his eyes glistening. "You've made me want to be better, to build something worthy of the love you've given me. I never imagined I deserved this kind of happiness, but you make me believe I can be the man you see when you look at me." Tears streamed down my face as he continued. "I can't promise you a normal life. I can't promise you simplicity or safety or conventionality. But I can promise you every beat of my heart, every breath in my body, every moment of every day for the rest of my life. I promise to love you fiercely, protect you completely, and cherish you always. Marry me, Peggy. Not because you need my protection, not because you're grateful, but because you want to build a life with me. Because you love me as impossibly, imperfectly, and completely as I love you. Yes, I sobbed, unable to get any other words out. Yes, Morris. 1,000 times yes. He stooped and slipped the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds that sparkled like stars. Before I could even look at it properly, Morris pulled me into his arms and kissed me deeply, passionately, while applause broke out from the street below. People who had stopped to watch this intimate moment were cheering for us, celebrating our love. When we finally broke apart, both of us laughing and crying at the same time, Morris cupped my face in his hands. I never thought I'd have this. Never thought someone like you would choose someone like me. Someone like you. I repeated, placing my hands over his. Morris, you're the bravest, most honorable, most loving man I've ever known. Yes, your life is complicated. Yes, your past has darkness in it. But you've shown me that love doesn't exist in perfection. It exists in the choice to see someone completely and love them anyway. To stand beside them through challenges and celebrate with them through joy. That's what you've given me. We stayed on that balcony until the stars came out, talking about our future with an excitement I had never felt before. Morris told me about his plans to legitimize more of the family businesses, to create something he could be proud of passing down to future generations. I want children with you, he said, his hand resting on my stomach as if already imagining that possibility. I want to teach them about their Cuban heritage, about their grandmother who believed in love and honor above all else. I want them to grow up knowing that their parents found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from the most unlikely beginning. I want that too, I said, covering his hand with mine. I want everything with you, Morris. The complicated parts and the simple parts. The challenges and the triumphs. All of it. We talked about where we would get married, what kind of life we wanted to build. Morris wanted something small and intimate, just the people who mattered most. I agreed completely. Our love didn't need a huge production. It just needed us, committing to each other in front of the people we trusted. You know our story is crazy, right? I said with a laugh. Woman on the run meets Mafia boss who protects her and they fall in love. It sounds like something from a movie. Morris grinned, that beautiful smile that transformed his entire face. The best love stories are the ones no one would believe. The ones that defy logic and expectations. We didn't fall in love because it made sense. We fell in love because we couldn't help it. Because when two people are meant to be together, circumstances don't matter. Timing doesn't matter. Logic doesn't matter. Only the connection matters. When did you become such a romantic? I teased. The moment you walked into my life and showed me what real love feels like. He kissed me softly. You've given me something I never thought I'd have, Peggy. Hope. A future that's about more than just surviving day to day. The belief that I can be more than my past, that I can build something good and true and lasting. As we finally left that balcony and walked hand in hand through the French Quarter streets, I reflected on the incredible journey that had brought us here. I had run from danger and found love. I had trusted a stranger and discovered my soulmate. I had faced my fears and emerged stronger, braver, more alive than I'd ever been. Morris Sanchez had awakened my senses with his touch, teaching me what it meant to feel deeply and completely. His fierce love had pierced my vulnerable heart, reaching places I didn't know existed. And together, we had created something more beautiful than either of us could have found alone. This wasn't the love story I had imagined for myself. It was better, more real, more profound. Because it was built on truth and acceptance and the courage to love someone completely, complications and all. 6 weeks later, I stood in front of a full-length mirror in the Victorian mansion, staring at my reflection in disbelief. The cream-colored dress was simple but elegant, falling in soft waves to just below my knees. Delicate lace covered my shoulders and arms, and I wore gardenias in my hair, their sweet scent reminding me of that first morning Morris bought me flowers at the French market. Carmen, Morris's sister, stood beside me with tears in her eyes. She had flown in from Texas the week before, and we had bonded immediately over our shared love for the complicated, wonderful man we both adored. "He's going to lose his mind when he sees you," she said, adjusting one of the flowers in my hair. "I've never seen my brother like this, Peggy. Happy. Genuinely, peacefully happy. You've given him something I didn't think anyone could." "He's given me the same thing," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. The chapel on St. Charles Avenue was small and intimate, built in the 1800s with stained glass windows that cast colored light across the polished wooden pews. We had invited only 20 people, the ones who truly mattered. Carmen and her husband, a few of Morris's trusted men who had become friends, some neighbors from the Garden District who had welcomed me warmly, and Morris's mother, who had flown in from Florida and embraced me like I was already her daughter. As the streetcar rumbled past outside, its familiar bell chiming, I took a deep breath and prepared to walk down the aisle. There was no grand processional, no traditional wedding march. Just me, walking toward the man I loved with all my heart. Morris stood at the altar, and the sight of him made my breath catch. He wore a charcoal gray suit that fit his muscular frame perfectly, but he hadn't tried to hide who he was. The tattoos on his neck were visible, dark roses and thorns that marked him as someone who had lived through darkness. His tattooed hands, those hands that could be so gentle with me, rested at his sides. He looked powerful and dangerous and devastatingly handsome. But it was his expression that made tears spring to my eyes. He was looking at me like I was the sun and moon and stars all combined. Like I was everything he had ever wanted and never thought he could have. His own eyes were glistening with unshed tears, and I saw his throat work as he swallowed hard. I walked down that short aisle alone, by choice. No one was giving me away. I was choosing him, of my own free will. When I reached Morris, he took my hands in his, and I felt them trembling slightly. The officiant, a kind older man who had known Morris's family for years, smiled at us warmly. "We are gathered here today to witness the joining of two souls who have found each other against all odds. Morris and Peggy have chosen to write their own vows, words that come from their hearts." Morris went first. He cleared his throat, his dark eyes never leaving mine, and when he spoke, his voice was raw with emotion. "Peggy, I spent 15 years building walls around my heart. 15 years convincing myself that feeling nothing was safer than feeling everything. I became hard, closed off, protected, and then you walked into a bookstore on a rainy night in New Orleans, and every single one of those walls started to crumble." His thumbs rubbed gentle circles on my hands as he continued. "You pierced through my defenses like they were paper. You found the vulnerable heart I had buried so deep I thought it was dead. You looked at me, really looked at me, and saw past the monster everyone else sees. You saw the man underneath, the man who wanted to be better, the man who was capable of love if only someone would believe in him enough to give him a chance." A tear slipped down his cheek, and I watched this strong, dangerous man let himself be completely vulnerable in front of everyone who mattered. You awakened senses I didn't know I still had. The ability to feel joy, to experience tenderness, to hope for a future that's about more than just survival. You taught me that strength includes gentleness, that power includes mercy, and that the bravest thing a man can do is open his heart completely to the woman he loves. His voice cracked slightly. I promise to spend every day of the rest of my life being worthy of the gift you've given me. I promise to love you fiercely, protect you always, and cherish every moment we have together. You are my light in the darkness, my peace in the chaos, my home. I love you, Peggy Wendland, with every part of me, the good parts and the broken parts. All of me belongs to you. I was crying openly now, unable to stop the tears that streamed down my face. When it was my turn to speak, I had to take a moment to compose myself. Morris, I spent my whole life feeling invisible, going through the motions of living without ever really feeling alive. I was safe, I was careful, I followed all the rules, and I was lonely in a way that went bone deep. I didn't even realize how empty my life was until you filled it with color and passion and purpose. I squeezed his hands, feeling the strength in them, the tattoos that marked his skin, the warmth that always made me feel safe. You found me when I was running, when I had nowhere to go and no one to trust. You could have been just another danger in a dangerous situation. Instead, you became my sanctuary. You showed me that love doesn't always come in safe packages. Sometimes it comes through the most unlikely person, in the most unexpected circumstances. And that kind of love, the kind that defies logic and expectations, is the most real love of all. I looked at his tattoos, visible beneath his suit, permanent marks of the life he had lived. I see all of you, Morris Sanchez, the darkness and the light, the complicated past and the hopeful future, the Mafia boss and the gentle artist, the fierce protector and the tender lover. And I love every single part of you, not despite who you are, but because of who you are. My voice grew stronger as I continued. You awakened my heart with your touch. You showed me what it means to feel deeply, to love completely, to live fully instead of just existing. You pierced through my defenses just as I pierced through yours, and together we found something neither of us thought was possible. We found home in each other. I smiled through my tears. I promised to stand beside you through every challenge, to love you through the complicated parts and celebrate with you through the joyful parts, to build a life with you that honors both where we've been and where we're going. I choose you, Morris, today and every day for the rest of our lives. The officiant's voice was gentle. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Morris, you may kiss your bride. Morris pulled me into his arms and kissed me with such tenderness and passion that the small gathering burst into applause. The stained glass windows threw colored light across us, red and blue and gold, as we sealed our commitment with a kiss that felt like coming home. When we finally broke apart, Morris rested his forehead against mine. My wife, he whispered, like he was testing out the word and finding it perfect. My husband, I replied, joy flooding through every part of me. We walked back down the aisle hand in hand while the streetcar bells chimed outside, the sound mixing with the applause and cheers of the people who loved us. As we stepped out of the chapel into the warm New Orleans afternoon, oak trees heavy with Spanish moss swaying above us, I felt complete in a way I had never imagined possible. This city had sheltered our love. These streets had witnessed our journey from strangers to soulmates. And now, as Morris pulled me close and kissed me again under the dappled sunlight, I knew that every step that had led me here, every fear I had faced, every risk I had taken, had been worth it for this moment. For this man, for this love, for this life we were building together. Charleston welcomed us with warm coastal breezes and the scent of salt air. Morris had chosen the city carefully, somewhere beautiful and historic but far enough from New Orleans that we could simply be a couple in love, not Morris Sanchez and his new bride. Our hotel overlooked the harbor, and on our first morning as husband and wife, I woke to find Morris already awake, propped up on one elbow, watching me with such adoration that my heart swelled. "Good morning, Mrs. Sanchez," he said softly, tracing my jawline with his fingertips. "I don't think I'll ever get tired of hearing you call me that," I replied, stretching and moving closer to his warmth. We spent our days exploring the city hand in hand. The Battery was my favorite, that historic promenade where antebellum mansions faced the water and cannons still pointed toward the harbor. Morris and I walked slowly, his arm around my waist, stopping frequently to kiss and simply hold each other. There was no rush, no agenda, just the pleasure of being together. "Tell me what you're thinking," I said as we watched sailboats glide across the water. Morris pulled me closer against his side. "I'm thinking that I never imagined I could have this. Peace. Joy. A woman who loves me completely. It feels like a dream I'm afraid to wake up from." "It's not a dream," I assured him, reaching up to touch his face. "This is real. We're real. And we have the rest of our lives to prove it." In the historic district, we wandered through narrow streets lined with rainbow-colored houses, their piazzas decorated with ferns and flowers. We ate she crab soup at a tiny restaurant tucked away from the tourist crowds. We listened to street musicians playing under centuries-old oak trees. We bought nothing and needed nothing except each other's company. The nights were ours alone. Morris made love to me with a tenderness that still took my breath away, his tattooed hands gentle as they explored every inch of my skin. He whispered Spanish words against my neck, love words I now understood. Mi esposa, my wife. Mi vida, my life. Mi todo, my everything. "You've given me everything I never knew I needed," he said one night, holding me close as moonlight streamed through the windows. "A reason to be better. A future worth building. Someone to come home to who sees me, really sees me, and loves me anyway. Always," I promised, kissing the tattoos on his chest, each one a story of survival and strength. When we returned to New Orleans a week later, the Garden District mansion felt different. It wasn't just Morris's house anymore. It was our home. Carmen had helped arrange some of my belongings throughout the rooms, and seeing my books mixed with his, my clothes in his closet, my toiletries beside his in the bathroom, made everything feel wonderfully, permanently real. Married life settled into a rhythm that felt both exciting and comfortable. Every morning, I woke in Morris's arms, his body warm and solid beside me. He would kiss my shoulder, my neck, my lips, before getting up to make coffee. I'd find him in the kitchen, already brewing that rich Cuban coffee his grandmother had taught him to make, and he'd pull me close for a proper good morning kiss that always left me breathless. "Buenos dias, mi amor," he'd murmur against my lips. "Good morning, husband," I'd reply, loving the way his eyes warmed at the word. The reality of being married to Morris Sanchez meant accepting that his life still included elements I couldn't fully understand. There were phone calls in Spanish late at night, meetings with men in expensive suits who looked at me with curiosity and respect, business dealings I didn't ask about because some things were better left unspoken. But I also saw the changes Morris was making. He was slowly, carefully legitimizing more of the family operations. Real estate investments in New Orleans and Miami, a restaurant chain that employed people from the community, construction companies that won contracts through proper channels. He was building something cleaner, something he could be proud of. "It takes time," he explained one evening as we sat in the library, his head in my lap while I read and he reviewed paperwork. "I can't just walk away from everything overnight. Too many people depend on the income, the protection. But I'm shifting things, Peggy. For us. For the family we'll have someday." "I know," I said, running my fingers through his hair. And I'm proud of you for trying. There were challenges. Nights when Morris came home tense and withdrawn, the weight of his responsibilities heavy on his shoulders. Times when I saw the darkness creep back into his eyes, when he struggled with choices that had no perfect answers. But we faced those moments together. I learned to read his moods, to know when he needed space and when he needed me close. He learned to let me in, to share his burdens instead of carrying them alone. Our love became the anchor that kept us both grounded when the world tried to pull us in different directions. Our evenings were sacred. Morris taught me to cook more of his grandmother's recipes, his hands guiding mine as we prepared ropa vieja, arroz con pollo, flan that melted on the tongue. We'd dance in the kitchen to old Latin music, his body pressed against mine, moving together in perfect rhythm. "You're getting good at this," he'd say, spinning me gently. "I have an excellent teacher," I'd reply, loving the way he held me, the way we fit together so perfectly. Quiet nights in the library became my favorite times. Morris would sketch while I read, both of us comfortable in the silence that comes from knowing someone so completely that words aren't always necessary. Sometimes I'd look up to find him drawing me again, capturing moments he wanted to preserve forever. "Why do you draw me so much?" I asked one evening. He looked up from his sketchbook, his expression tender. "Because I never want to forget how you look when you're lost in a story. How the lamplight catches your hair. How peaceful you are when you're happy. I spent so many years surrounded by ugliness. Peggy, you're beautiful, and I need to remind myself that this is real, that you're mine, that I get to keep you." Those words, that raw honesty, was what sustained us through the challenges. Our fierce love for each other was stronger than any obstacle. When Morris had difficult days dealing with his business, I was there to hold him and remind him why he was fighting to build something better. When I had moments of doubt or fear about the life we'd chosen, he was there to reassure me that our love was worth any complication. 3 months into our marriage, Morris came home early one afternoon and found me in the garden, reading under the magnolia tree. He sat beside me without a word, pulling me into his arms and just holding me. "Bad day?" I asked softly. "Until now," he replied. "Coming home to you, holding you like this, it makes everything else bearable. You're my peace, Peggy, my sanctuary. No matter what happens out there in the world, I know I have this. I have you, and that's enough to face anything." I turned in his arms to kiss him properly. "We have each other. That's all we need." "All we need," he agreed, and held me tighter as the New Orleans sun filtered through Spanish moss and the world around us faded to nothing but the two of us, together, exactly where we belonged. 1 year after our wedding, I stood in the doorway of what would become our baby's nursery, watching Morris paint the walls a soft yellow. He had insisted on doing it himself, refusing to hire anyone else for this particular job. His shirt was off, revealing the full extent of the tattoos that covered his muscular back and arms, each one a story of the life he'd lived before me. My hand rested on my growing belly, feeling the flutter of movement that still amazed me every single time. Our baby, our future, the physical proof that love could create something beautiful even from the most unlikely beginning. Morris glanced over his shoulder and caught me watching. His face lit up with that smile I loved so much, the one reserved only for me. "Come here, mi amor," he said, setting down his paintbrush. I crossed the room and he pulled me gently into his arms, careful of my belly. His paint-stained hands rested on my stomach, and we both felt the baby kick against his palm. The look of wonder on his face made tears spring to my eyes. "Every time I feel that, I can't believe this is real," he whispered. "That we created a life together. That I get to be a father." "What kind of father do you think you'll be?" I asked, The question I'd been wanting to ask for weeks. Morris was quiet for a moment, his hand still gently cradling my belly. I want to be the kind of father who teaches our child about honor and loyalty, about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard, about protecting the people you love with everything you have. He looked into my eyes, his own glistening with emotion. But most importantly, I want to be the kind of father who shows them what real love looks like, who loves their mother so completely, so fiercely, that they never doubt what devotion means. "You're going to be an amazing father," I said, cupping his face in my hands. "Because I had you to show me how," he replied. "You've taught me that strength includes tenderness, that being vulnerable isn't weakness, that opening your heart is the bravest thing you can do." He kissed my forehead gently. "Our child will grow up knowing they were wanted, loved, cherished. They'll know that their parents found each other against impossible odds and built something beautiful." Morris suddenly dropped to his knees in front of me, his hands still on my belly, his forehead pressed against where our baby grew. The sight of this powerful, dangerous man kneeling before me with such reverence took my breath away. "Thank you," he said, his voice breaking. "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible to myself. Thank you for piercing through my defenses and finding the heart I'd buried. Thank you for awakening parts of me I thought were dead. Thank you for loving me when I didn't think I deserved to be loved." Tears streamed down my face as he continued. "You transformed my life, Peggy. You took a man who was just surviving, just going through the motions, and you showed him what it means to really live, to really feel, to really love." He looked up at me, his face wet with tears. "I was so empty before you, so closed off, and now I'm so full of love and hope and gratitude that sometimes I don't know how my heart contains it all." I ran my fingers through his hair, overcome with emotion. "You did the same for me, Morris. You awakened my senses with your touch, showed me what it means to feel deeply and completely. Your fierce love pierced my vulnerable heart and made me whole in ways I didn't know I needed." He stood and gathered me carefully in his arms, mindful of our baby between us. "We found something more precious than safety, didn't we? We found home in each other." "Yes," I whispered against his chest. "We found home." As we stood there in that sunny nursery, holding each other with our baby between us, I reflected on everything our story had taught me. Love doesn't always arrive in safe packages. It doesn't always make logical sense. Sometimes it comes through the most unexpected person, in the most unlikely circumstances, when you're least prepared for it. Real love requires courage. The courage to see past surfaces to the heart underneath. The courage to trust when trust seems impossible. The courage to open yourself completely to another person, knowing they have the power to hurt you but believing they won't. Morris and I had found each other in darkness and built a life filled with light. He was still complicated, still had ties to a world most people would never understand. But he was also the man who made me coffee every morning, who danced with me in the kitchen, who painted our baby's nursery with his own hands because he wanted every brush stroke to be filled with love. "What are you thinking?" Morris asked, his hand rubbing gentle circles on my back. "I'm thinking about that night in the bookstore. How terrified I was. How you walked in and I thought you were just another danger I needed to run from." I smiled up at him. I never could have imagined that the man I feared that night would become the man I love more than life itself. That you would awaken my heart and show me what real love feels like. "We've come a long way from that rainy night on Bourbon Street," he said with a soft laugh. "We have. And Morris, if I could go back and do it all over again, I wouldn't change a single thing. Not the fear, not the danger, not the impossible circumstances. Because all of it led me to you. Led us to this moment, to this baby, to this beautiful life we're building together. He kissed me then, slow and tender and filled with all the love we shared. When we broke apart, he rested his hand on my belly again, feeling our baby move. Our child is going to grow up surrounded by love, he said firmly. They'll know that their father was far from perfect, but that he loved their mother with everything he had. They'll learn that real love isn't about perfection. It's about acceptance and commitment and choosing each other every single day. They'll learn that from both of us, I replied. Because you chose me too, Morris. You chose to open your guarded heart. You chose to be vulnerable. You chose love over fear. The afternoon sun streamed through the nursery windows, painting everything in shades of gold. Morris pulled me close again, and we swayed together gently, dancing without music, just holding each other in the space we had created for our child. This was our legacy, not wealth or power or empire. Love. Fierce, transformative, unconditional love that had awakened us both and given us a future we never thought possible. A love that had pierced through our defenses and found the vulnerable hearts beneath. A love that proved that home isn't a place but a person, and we had found our home in each other. As our baby kicked between us and the New Orleans sun blessed the room where our child would sleep, I knew with absolute certainty that every risk had been worth it, every fear overcome, every wall broken down. Because this, right here, was everything. Morris Sanchez had awakened my senses with his touch, and his fierce love had pierced my vulnerable heart. And together, we had found something more precious than safety or security or any life I could have planned. We had found each other. We had found love. We had found home. Thank you so much for watching our story. If this tale of unexpected love touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support means absolutely everything to us and helps us continue bringing you powerful love stories like this one. Tomorrow, we have another incredible story dropping that you won't want to miss. A story about love, courage, and the power of second chances. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Until then, remember that real love can find you in the most unexpected places with the most unlikely person and change your life forever.